All right. Welcome to Triple Coverage. This is our inaugural episode. It means episode one. And we got some three fine people here today. Got someone in the top left, me, and someone right below me on my screen. And we're just going to go around, introduce ourselves, and so you'll be able to know us throughout the season. We're going to start in the off season, and we're going to build that foundation when we get to the actual games and the actual knowledge. So, Caleb, why don't you start?
All right. Yep. Thanks, Mitch. So yeah, my name's Caleb. Yeah. I mean, do you want us to talk about like why
No,
we love
just
football or anything? Just anything? Yeah. I mean,
of
I
course.
I mean, I love fantasy football. Dynasty is awesome. A couple years ago when we all got into Dynasty, I mean, you guys might have gone into it a little bit before me, but I was like iffy on Dynasty, and I mostly played redraft up until that point. Like I feel like most people do, but you know, you guys introduced me to Dynasty and I loved it. It's awesome. You get more into the analytics and you can look into the rookie prospects and it gets you kind of more into the game. Redraft's also, still amazing, but I mean, just the draw of Dynasty and being able to really hold a team and then evaluate players and see where their value goes, which we'll be discussing today, is awesome. And I love it. I mean, my favorite football team is the Vikings. I've always been a fan growing up watching them. You got to do the skull right. And it's cool too seeing them now with Kevin O'Connell and Justin Jefferson. We've really grown into an awesome team in the NFC, and we got the Lions and the Bears who are also on the rise. And our division now gets a lot of attention, and it's cool to see that people are really taking notice. We've always been a good team, but we had never really got a Super Bowl yet, but maybe that'll change here soon. So yeah, Sam, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit?
Wait, you forgot your
All
favorite
right.
food. They have to know. They have to
Oh
know
yeah,
about us.
wings, buffalo wings, phenomenal. I will always eat wings. If you put them in front of me, I'm gonna eat them. So
Good choice.
All right. I'll introduce myself. My name is Sam. I really only got into fantasy football because of these two here, actually. Really started off doing a redraft and really only started liking it once I understood it. I think that's the biggest part. And Dynasty, which is another aspect to that, where it was trying to understand rookies coming in, which was really cool. It's almost like trying to scout guys coming up yourself and kind of realizing who you like versus who other people like. I think that's probably the best part is like trying to find your guy. And that's honestly how I love to play Dynasty Fantasy Football. Um, I'll love talking about dudes who I think can
Hold
make
up.
it. I love potential and guys who may not have that look to them or anything like that. I love having an advantage, and that's honestly why I love fantasy football, is just trying to give myself, an advantage over the rest of the field. And yeah, and I would say for my favorite food, I would go with probably a nice cooked steak. I'll go with that. Medium rare.
I
Classic.
was gonna say better not be too cooked.
No.
Yeah, and Sam actually, he's had one of the biggest come ups in our dynasty league. We're in it with a couple of my friends, and we can get to that a little later. My name is Mitch. I I mean, I loved football ever since I was young. I actually played on a team with Sam. He was the quarterback, I was the running back, and so ever since a young age, I really just loved everything about football, watching it with family, friends, and now gambling on it. I do a bunch of best ball. I do dynasty, redraft. I bet on the games each weekend. Yeah, I really agree with what Sam said with finding the players you like. Some of us have a little bit more uh, are a little bit more a little bit better at choosing good players. I latched myself onto John Mechie, so not a great player to hook your horse to. And my favorite food, it's gonna be dark chocolate. Can't go wrong with with a chocolate to
Just
start the
just
day.
plain, or do you want like sea salt or
No, no,
caramel?
He's
no.
going the special dark
It better
chocolate.
not be like that 95% cocoa shit. That is awful.
Yeah, it's gotta be artisan, local, dark
Yeah,
chocolate.
well that's the same as milk
Artisan.
chocolate. You know, it's not any different.
Yeah, none of that
So
Hershey's crap. All right,
Okay.
and I just have one question before we get into the meat and bones of our topic today. So we just got done with March Madness and the Super Bowl and football season, and I just got to thinking when watching March Madness, I just realized that I love the Final Four so much more than the Super Bowl, and it's probably a hot take, and there's so much more tension. The crowd goes crazier, and like especially when you're in these leagues, the bracket leagues with all your friends, like it comes down to who has which team. It's way more fun. I don't know. I feel like the Super Bowl, because we're so focused on the regular season and in fantasy football and dynasty, it's Super Bowl is a little underwhelming. Like weeks 15 to 17 are Super Bowl. At least that's how I see it. So I just do you have any thoughts on that?
yeah, well the NFL Red Zone countdown is better than both of those.
I'd say this year the Masters performed the best when it comes to sports cinema. So
Big Rory guy here.
Rory guy,
All
unfortunately,
right.
I've watched that man play for 11 years, lose for 11 years, and it finally just happened.
All right. Yeah, I
So
mean, Mitch, the regarding what you said, I could give a shit about
No one
March
cares what I
Madness
say.
because St. John's didn't make it, and I picked. So
Yeah.
it depends. If my team that I'm
Personal
going all in on
biases.
I think
is
that's a
still in it,
skill
then yeah,
issue. I'm just gonna say I picked Florida to win. So
yeah. I mean, good
let's
on you.
just put that out there
That's
And
right.
why'd you pick them?
because they had a great defense and a great offense.
Yeah, well,
He
At least that's
doesn't
probably
always work. That's why I picked
and
Auburn 2 years ago, and they got eliminated right off the bat.
Wait, guys. Sam probably picked Florida because that's the guy we're going to be talking about next. We're going to be going
Yeah.
into our first topic of Anthony Richardson. Very volatile. Uh,
Ass.
very uh, a player who you really don't know what's going to happen week to week. I mean, some weeks he's throwing dimes to Alec Pierce. Some weeks he's throwing dimes to Patrick Surtain. I mean, from week to week, it is very inconsistent. And, we just have the question of would you want Anthony Richardson on your dynasty roster? Would you trade for him? Would you want to trade him away? Last year, his value was almost double of what it is this year, based on keep trade cut. But just practically, what does he mean to you in the dynasty landscape, Caleb?
Yeah, I mean, just like you said, probably I can't think of other than Justin Fields, right? I can't think of a more polarizing player. Um, he's incredible, athletic specimen. People knew that coming into the league, and people have always been high on him. And I still think people are like people that have him are high on him, right? And that's why I don't think I want to buy him because he's hard to buy unless somebody has him as like their QB 3, 4, and they're willing to pivot off of him for another foundational piece. But I wouldn't give much for him. I would not be willing personally to give a first for him right now. But he's not a sell because what are you going to get for him? That potential that he has. It's built into his frame and his size as a player, and people know that, and that's why people were so high on him last year, right? Like people want to see him succeed, and if you have him, you want to see him succeed. So he's not a buy because you just can't get him for what you can't get what he's actually worth if you're going to trade him, and you can't buy him because of, he's or you can't sell him because he's so low right now, and no one's going to pay up for what you actually want and what he can be.
But before Sam goes, I just want to say I feel like people are really honest about Anthony Richardson. They know who he is, and like a lot of his value is based on his upside because right now he's not going to keep a job in the NFL if he keeps playing how he is. But he's 22. He's younger than any quarterback getting drafted right now, younger than Shador Campbell. And when you think about, you know, young quarterbacks, Jalen Hurts, Sam Darnold, even Lamar Jackson, they're not close to young. They're 27 and above. Anthony Richardson he has so much to learn ahead of him, but he has so much time. And there's a lot of quarterbacks like Sam Darnold, Geno Smith, to name just a few that have recovered from having terrible seasons and have shown to be valuable quarterbacks with less tools than a guy like Anthony Richardson. He's really only played, I believe it's like 30 games and since he started high school, so there's a lot for him to learn.
Yes. There is the developmental aspect of Anthony Richardson. He was that prospect coming out of college. Um, Everyone kind of, even I remember hearing Florida Gator fans were so shocked hearing that he was getting drafted that high because no one really thought he was the next big thing, right? Um, but Anthony Richardson has a lot of concerning aspects about being an NFL quarterback. And I think the Colts are actually making it pretty easy for us as watchers to kind of decide what his future is going to be. With them bringing in Daniel Jones as his competition, it really is sink or swim this year. And I would probably advise anyone having Anthony Richardson on their dynasty team to hold him because at this point in time, you're probably getting what, maybe a second round for him. Would you be okay with letting him go for a second round if you think he's not going to be anything next year? The answer is probably yes, but still, you probably gave up a lot, or at least had a very high pick to get Anthony Richardson in the first place, and this is his year to perform. There's just a bunch of red flags with him, right? He has a accuracy level that is only seen by some of the worst QBs to ever come around the league
You
and
mean
have
quarterbacks who have won playoff games, like Tim Tebow?
It's different. It's a
that it's different. It's more like the what is it, 47% completion rate or something like that?
I think it was last
With
year, but overall it's 51. But
okay,
was
and
either
that
way, it's bad.
accuracy or
here
completion rate?
here's that's it was completion rate.
Yeah, I think Mitch
And
talking about
I
accuracy.
know a big thing too though is the Colts have a lot of drops on the receiver core, but I feel like a lot of that actually stems from Anthony not necessarily having the NFL touch. He kind of has one speed when he throws the football, and that is as hard as fucking possible. I mean, that's honestly just he only has that one speed because I think a lot of the times he doesn't have the decision making to know to when to anticipate the throw. And so he just compensates by throwing it as hard as possible.
Yeah, and it's
And
such a
so I
shame. Well, sorry, you go
go
finish
ahead,
up.
go ahead.
I was just gonna say it's such a shame because beginning of last season, remember week one, the man was going balls to the wall like until he got what was it? Did he get a concussion that week one? I forget what happened, but or he got hurt, or was it his shoulder?
No,
Remember
it
he
was
landed on his
his
shoulder?
I think it was his knee week one
Yeah,
because it was at the
but
very end
up
of the
until that
game.
point,
Is this the
didn't he have
last
like
season?
three rushing touchdowns or something? And like that's what I'm saying is like he goes absolutely ham out there. He is a football player through and through. Like he's gonna go out there and put his life on the line. But that's unfortunately one of his flaws is that he gets injured all the time, right? And it's like once he starts playing, you're saying oh no or oh shit half the time instead of oh like celebrating touchdowns and things like that. Like you're worried about him throwing interceptions and getting hurt. It's like Tua whenever he goes for a run. Like you're like oh no, this is gonna have to be career ending. But
But
and
for
he
the
needs to learn how to
opposite
slide.
reason,
Yeah, well, he needs to learn how to protect himself, right? And work on his accuracy. Same things, and people forget, Lamar, Jalen, these guys that we now tout as like the top cream of the crop players, they had their concerns. People are talking about their accuracy, their throwing completion rates, and look at them now. These guys are true dual threat quarterbacks, and that is something that can happen with Anthony Richardson. It's just that's why you got to hold him. But if he is like your QB2 and you're relying on that, that is that's scary, right? You
For
if in
super
dynasty,
flex, right?
yeah, for super flex leagues, if you're relying on him as your QB2, you need to figure out something else. I would still hold him, but if you can like somehow work in, if you got a high pick to take like a Shador or a Cam Ward or something like that, I would immediately do that, right? If you're in a position where you're like, oh, this is a good running back class, maybe I should take a running back. I mean, if you have anything from 3 on, I'd probably or 2 potentially, I'd take, depending on where Cam, as of this recording, we don't know where these quarterbacks are going to get drafted, but if Cam Ward gets a good spot and gets drafted high, I would absolutely take him if you're in that position, so that you don't have to rely on Anthony as your QB2.
And I just want to bring up one more thing about Anthony, and this is something I think that's not talked about enough. We talk about Jalen Hurts being a really good mobile QB. Well, do you remember who the offensive coordinator was when he had the 2 best passing seasons of his career? It was Shane Steichen, the head coach of the Indianapolis Colts. And with Anthony still not performing under a guy who has the history to help a mobile QB, sure he doesn't have AJ Brown and Devontae Smith. I get that, but he has the experience to help Anthony get to where he should be, and he's still not. So, like Caleb saying, it's probably best to hold on to him just to hope he raises in value again. But if you have an opportunity to get another QB, definitely do that. Get another QB.
Yeah, definitely a third quarterback as a preference. A little more context I just want to put behind Anthony Richardson before we move on is that he has so last year he was ninth in pocket time. So yeah, he is a pocket passer at heart. He doesn't want to run. But he also has, like, we talk so much about his passing, we don't talk about the running game he possesses too. I mean, he could never throw and be, like him and Jonathan Taylor would be ridiculous to stop, especially behind the Colts offensive line, which was, fourth and ninth respectively in the past 2 seasons. Um, it's kind of funny though because it doesn't really match the his pressure stats. He was actually pressured at the fourth highest percentage of any quarterback last year. So in pass protection, his offensive line is not helping him out. They're a run first team, run first offensive line, and so it's funny because that's like they score a ton of points, they get a ton of yards on the ground, and then you have these inconsistent passing metrics to match that with. But it's a result of how they've set up the team almost.
Yeah, I mean, what do you think of him, Mitch? He's on your dynasty team as your QB2. How are you feeling?
Yeah, I haven't had any trade requests, no serious ones, like very like, you know, what do you think about him? And I'm definitely holding him. I would like, because it's basically he's going to become, a top 10 QB in the league or he's going to bust essentially. So it's just insanely risky. I love taking risks, so I'd probably be in on it, especially for a mid-second round pick. I mean, what you're going to get I don't know, Jalen Royals or Ollie Gordon, or you could have Anthony Richardson, especially if you have, 2 iffy quarterbacks as your starters anyways. So I think
Mhm.
it really depends on team, but I would
Yeah,
not
I
sell.
am I'm in a little more fortunate position. I have him in one of my other dynasty leagues. Except I have Drake May and Trevor Lawrence as my 2 other QBs. So my hope is that if I just hold on to him, this year maybe he can figure something out. And who knows, he could be the next Josh Allen. But maybe not. There's a lot of red flags. So that's why I just hold and pray.
Yep. Thank you for joining us, and we will talk to you next week, probably. All right, bye.
Yeah.
Later.